Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Sara Gullickson is an entrepreneur, investor, and corporate dealmaker with more than a decade of experience building and scaling businesses personally and professionally. A multi state cannabis license holder, Gullickson has a proven track record in identifying new opportunities and infusing traditional business strategies into progressive markets. First and foremost, Sarah, tell me about your backstory. How did you get started in all this?
Well, back in the day when I was, mid 20s, early 20s, I had a spa salon and health facility website. I learned really quickly that working for somebody else at an entry level salary couldn't support the lifestyle that I envisioned for myself. And so I was doing freelance marketing really for clients. And there was a Craigslist ad. I've told this story like a gazillion times, but it's funny. And it was like, need marketing for pot. And I was like, well, I could probably do that. I was already working in health and wellness. I came from a naturopathic background where, my family was raised in a certain way that, taking a plant to make you feel better didn't seem super foreign to me.
Oh,
I didn't know what I was getting into, obviously, at the time, but the saying that like sometimes ignorance is bliss, it definitely was.
very, very interesting. So, what did you study in college? Just out of curiosity.
Communications.
Oh, very
Um,
cool.
Yeah, so I went to ASU. It was less for communications degree, more for social fun party. Um, and then I realized pretty quickly that an undergrad wasn't going to get me the salary that I wanted if I was going to work in like a marketing agency setting. So I actually did go back and get my MBA. And now you look back and you're like, should I have done that? I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I was like 22 or 23. But I have those credentials as well.
Very cool. So, present day moment, tell me a little bit about what you're up to and what your company's all about.
Yeah, so absolutely. It's ebbed and flowed and it's changed enormously over, the last 15 years, obviously, because the industry's changed a ton. And so, I feel like where we've really done best is we've been able to remain relevant. So back when lawyers weren't taking on consulting work to help build requests for proposals or requests for applications in the cannabis space. We launched a business that was consulting for cannabis, and then we did it, right? And
Mm,
so we rode that wave for a really long time because we became experts because there was nobody else doing what we were doing. And so we went state to state to state, help legislators. And then when the industry kind of like leveled up and hedge funds and real capital were interested in the opportunities, it was definitely like a joint process in the sense we were working with lobbyists, we were working with attorneys, and we were obviously the consultants managing the entire process. And then,
mm,
after that, it became saturated. Everybody said that they were a cannabis consultant. And
mm,
so I would say about 3 years ago, I changed our business model where I was like, I don't want to work for clients anymore. I don't want to focus on making everybody else, rich in these assets. I really want to figure out how to raise the capital, how to deploy the capital, and how to
mm.
win these licenses for ourselves and for our investment groups. So that's really what we focused on for the last, I would say, 3 years.
Yeah, it's almost like the potential's there, but until it's regulated and until there's a path forward, investors don't want to touch these things. And I wonder, when you're dealing with getting legislation pushed, and can you tell me a little bit more about that pathway and how you work with politicians and how the whole process works? Because, cannabis is something that had a lot of pushback for many, many years, and it still kind of does, but at least there's some conversation being had. And can only imagine it's a stressful and annoying process to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's like anything you do this amount of time, you become a natural at it or you shouldn't be doing it anymore, right? And
Mm,
so annoying, stressful, like those are just that's normal in this space, right? So I always say I'm like a doomsday prepper because you have to have a plan A, you have to have a plan B, and you have to have a plan C. And so every project that we do, in every element, we have, three different plans. Working with the legislators is interesting. I really have a very strong passion for it. I didn't come
Mm,
from like a hyper political family by any means. I'm like highly dyslexic, like very severely dyslexic. And so I think it's funny that I like have a company and I manage things because I don't think my
it's
parents
not
would have probably
surprising,
bet
to be
on that.
honest.
Well, it's not now knowing, but before it was like, oh, geez, like, are we going to have a daughter that we have to pay for the rest of our lives? But they haven't. So this is great news. Um, and so, I think with, having any sort of indifference, you do things a little bit different than other people. And so I
Yeah,
think that was my superpower because when you're explaining something very complex to a group of people that don't want to understand, you really have to refine your message to articulate what you're doing, say it in a non-threatening way, and really it's your marketing message, right? You have to
of course.
tailor that message to the audience. And so I think like obviously lawyers aren't able to do that as well as I am, and so
Yeah,
that was something that I found like that I really enjoyed because I was able to get through to the legislators to say, do it like this, not like that, and here are the
yeah.
benefits.
There's so much to
Um,
unpack in that message. I don't even know where to start. Your dyslexia, I will get back to that. Let's put a pin in that for just a moment. Talking about taking complex ideas and making them digestible specifically for politicians is actually just a conversation I had yesterday. I was talking about blockchain and crypto and how it's just an emerging and disruptive industry, but it's always complicated because it's like the tech is there, the potential is there, the opportunity is there, but the people who make the rules aren't like politicians aren't scientists, right? And politicians aren't
right.
doctors and they don't and they're not worried about 20, 30 years from now for the most part. They're worried about, their term. It's
Absolutely.
and nothing against politicians whatsoever. It's just in terms of like, even when we're talking about elections, like it's the economy, stupid, right? It's what directly affects us is where our primary focuses start. And it is a challenge. I mean, you can be incredibly intelligent. You can have the best idea in the world. If you can't appeal to the masses, if you can't make your case to the people who make the decisions, you will lose out to someone who does every time.
Mhm.
So I imagine that's a skill you've earned over time. And it's interesting you've taken on that road. And now I kind of want to segue into what makes Sarah Sarah. I want to talk about your uniqueness factor because you are one of the first female, from what I've read online, you're the first female entrepreneur to run a publicly traded cannabis company. And you have dyslexia and you have learning disabilities and you've managed to navigate this process quite successfully. What do you think your uniqueness factor is that gives you a competitive edge over those around you?
I think I cared. I think I wanted to be successful. I think that when somebody brought me a project, I carried the project like it was my own, even if it was just client work. And I wanted to make history. And I know that sounds really stupid, but I wanted one day, if I ever had children, for my kids to read about me that I did something impactful and meaningful. And so
Mm,
that's how I tried to live my life on a day to day, where it's like, how can we force change? How can we help families get access to cannabis? Because that was the driver in the beginning, right? It wasn't
mm,
recreational, it was medical. And so, I think that my moral compass, my integrity, and, some of those like personal qualities helped me surpass some of my peers because I was younger than a lot of people that were trying to do what I was doing. And I was really hungry. Like, I wanted
mm,
to maintain my lifestyle. I wanted to travel. I wanted to sit at the table with the big boys, so to speak, that were like, very successful older entrepreneurs. And I wanted to feel like I had a place there. But not only did I want to feel like I had a place there, I wanted to be able to feel like I could contribute.
right.
And so I think with that, it takes repetition, it takes refining your skills. Um, it takes, drinking confidence for breakfast and all the things. But I think most of the time, if you have your moral compass and your ethics and things like that intact, it usually goes pretty well.
Yeah. You mentioned early on that you just weren't happy for the nine
Oh
to five,
gosh,
and you felt you wanted something bigger.
I
Now,
know.
was it all about the dollars? What exactly, if you had to do some introspection and see what about doing the 9 to 5 didn't give you fulfillment, what do you think that might be?
I'm not like a cookie cutter person. Like, I didn't grow up as a cookie cutter person. My parents weren't cookie cutter people. And so, like, sitting behind a desk and listening and typing on a keyboard of what somebody
I
else
mean,
wanted me to do was
maybe
foreign.
you
It
do
just
that
was.
today, right?
I don't. I actually don't. I
Okay.
don't. I'm like on the mountain. I'm hiking. I'm running kids.
Oh,
I feel like work. I love work. I'm very passionate about what I do, but I have never looked at work as the only, right? And so it was
yeah,
always like a lifestyle. So could I get on a flight and fly to Croatia after we finished a process and decompress for 2 weeks while I reinvented for the next state process? And so it was like things like that that really drove me.
yeah.
Um, and just that kind of inspiration of being able to create what my days look like, keep me fresh. Like we were just busy a couple weeks ago and I told everyone, I'm like, don't call me unless you need me because I need to do what I need to do, which is rest, relax, get my head back screwed on straight because I have to be ready to reinvent for the next project because that's what
Hmm.
this type of line of work takes.
Good answer. I only asked that question because I want to get into your head of like sometimes we know we're not happy with a certain direction, but we can't necessarily put our finger on it. But years down the line, looking back in hindsight, it's always clear what might have not made us feel satisfied when we get that feeling today. So that was a
It
great
was
answer.
boring. It was boring to me. And I know some people really like boring and they like structure and they like standard operating procedures to tell them what to do. I like to create the roadmap. I like to
Yeah.
create the standard operating procedures and I like other people that are
S-
better suited to execute.
y- Yeah, as much as I would agree with you, Sarah, it's not the entrepreneurial route is not always the better one when you look at
No,
it transactionally, right?
no.
You're making much less for an extended period of time. You're onboarding a lot of risk. And I know you talk about traveling whenever you want, but in fact, you have the exact opposite in the beginning. Every problem is your problem. Counting is your problem. Marketing is your problem. Software development is your problem. Billing is your problem. Deliveries is your problem. Logistics is your problem, as opposed to working in an accounting firm where you just need to focus on a very narrow vertical and you don't care about sales and you don't care about anything else. And to some of
True.
us, the idea that getting an email on Friday at 5 p.m. and then telling the person, "Oh, I'm only going to be able to see it Monday. I'll respond to you then," sounds incredibly depressing and boring. But some people like that stability. It's an illusion of choice. I think that we're when we're born, we're just predisposed and we're wired to behave in a certain way. You wake up every day, Sarah, drinking your confidence in the morning and feeling excited to pursue that path. There's absolutely no reason why you just don't wake up one day and be like, like screw all this. I just want to have 9 to 5.
No,
So it's
I've felt like that before, like, especially, like, right after I had my kids, and, like, there have been times in my career where I'm like, "Maybe this isn't where I need
yeah.
to be today."
Oh, of
I
course you would
just
question it,
I'm
but then you would
unemployable at this point, I don't know what to tell you,
right.
like, I don't
But
I wouldn't
But
know how
as
to do it.
miserable as it makes you, for whatever reason, you wake up the next morning and there's a voice in your head saying, let's just continue this. Let's just continue this.
Totally.
Yeah, and here you are. So let's talk about today now. Uh, if you had one wish that would, where anything would be granted to fix the current prevailing issue in your industry, what would that be? Holding you back from growth? Like, what would be your current bottleneck?
I mean, I think that it's the obvious, like, the difference between the federal and the state in the sense that, like, cannabis is still federally illegal. I am not a big fan of federal legalization. I would like banking to open up. Like right now, we have a bunch of different companies in our bank accounts, and paying people is really hard. And so that's like, I think, our biggest pain point or my biggest pain point. I wouldn't want a wand to like solve the issues. I like solving the issues. I like the
So let me ask you
industry.
this, Sarah. You're drowned. Sorry, I apologize for cutting you off.
That's right.
Yeah, so you're saying the biggest issue in your industry today is just the bureaucracy, the discrepancy between the government and the states, the federal, sorry, and the states. And I wonder if that were to be solved today, would that give you a lot more of a competitive landscape? And the fact that you have this nuanced in-depth understanding of how legislation gets trickled down to various states, how to navigate those waters, as complex as it might be for you. I wonder, does that also give you a significant advantage in this playing field? Because you understand
I
the ropes and you
mean,
know the nuances. Just out of curiosity.
it would change things, but, like, people are willing to stroke $5 million checks. I'm not going and getting, like, small business loans and things like that. It would just open up the landscape a bit, and so I guess the industry has gone corporate. Maybe it would create more opportunities for smaller businesses to participate. It just for me personally, it would create more ease.
Hmm, I see. So, if you had to guess, where you've come in the past 5 to 10 years, where do you anticipate you see yourself and the industry in the next decade?
So I've been told my entire career, "What are you gonna do when there are no more licenses to give away?" I have heard that repeat itself hundreds of times. And a year ago, I looked at the industry as a whole from just the United States, and we did a study and we said, how many people in the United States of America have access to recreational cannabis? And it wasn't even half of our population. So, what that tells me is there's still a lot more work to be done. Do I personally want to be the one doing that work in the next 10 years? Probably not. And so I am diversifying and working on, some other projects in other industries. But as long as I still love cannabis, as long as I can still put good projects together, and as long as I'm still passionate about it, I will participate.
Very interesting. And how do you think this discrepancy between the federal government and the states will kind of alleviate itself over time, or do you still see this being an issue in the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, how big of an issue is it really, right? How many states do we have legalized? We have like 30 some odd states that have legalized. So, is it an issue? Maybe, but like it's not as big of an issue in the sense that it stopped things, right?
Mm,
And so I don't think there's like a federal overlay that you can put on top of what's going on a state by state basis that would like alleviate the problem. There wouldn't be something like complex enough to count for everything that's already
mm,
happened, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So, I think we truck along and I think we've made like huge progress in the last 15 years. And I think we continue to, build great businesses. And I think that from a culture standpoint or from a community standpoint or from like an acceptance standpoint, whether that's banking, whether that's, people being open to alternative medicine, the awareness just keeps growing. And that's really
mm,
what we want to happen.
right. And that actually segues into my next question: is the stigma that's behind the use of cannabis. Uh, why do you think the stigma still sticks today? I know it's gotten a lot better, but like, how would you make the argument of why cannabis is something that everyone should be trying and taking?
I just don't think it's like mainstream enough. I don't think, every state still doesn't have access to it. I think there are still some of the old stigmas like, couch potato, it's going to make you lazy. And it is really unfortunate because if you do any studies on like what's better for you, this or that, like cannabis is not bad for you, right? It's not highly addictive. It's not, it's much better for you than drinking. And so I think that comes with time. And I don't think that we've been at this long enough.
Mm. So, Sarah, how can people get in touch with you?
You can do a quick Google search on Sara Gullickson. Otherwise, visit saragullickson.com, and that has links to my socials. And then our company page is thecannabisbusinessadvisors.com.
Wonderful. Sarah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so
And
much. I appreciate it.
I wish you much success on your endeavors and keep up the awesome work.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay.